The day the forest took a boy. The morning air was crisp and fresh in the Colorado mountains, sunlight filtering gently through the tall pines and aspens. It was October 2nd, 1999, a day that began like any other for 3-year-old Jaryd Atadero, a small boy with wide, curious eyes and a spirit full of adventure. Jaryd had spent his young life exploring the woods around his family's mountain resort nestled deep inside the Roosevelt National Forest. Alan Atadero, Jaryd's father, was a single parent who had moved his children from the chaos of city life to the quiet of the forest. Alan loved the outdoors and made it his mission to raise Jaryd and his older sister Jocelyn, surrounded by nature's calm. It was a simple life, filled with hiking, birdwatching, and storytelling around campfires. That day, Jaryd was with a group from the Christian Singles Network, a local fellowship that had become close to the Atadero family. The group often gathered for outdoor trips, sharing a bond of faith and friendship. Alan trusted them, and with a light heart, he let Jaryd and Jocelyn join a supervised outing to a nearby state fish hatchery, a place known for teaching kids about trout and the natural world. The plan seemed straightforward and safe. Children and adults walked together on a gentle, family-friendly trail leading to the hatchery. Laughter filled the air, the sound of footsteps crunching on the forest floor, and the occasional chirp of a bird overhead. Jaryd was especially excited, darting ahead with the boundless energy of a child enchanted by the forest. He ran to spot birds, called out animal names, and eagerly explored every leaf and stone in his path. But then, without warning, the plan changed. Without telling Alan or seeking his approval, the adults decided to take a detour. Instead of the gentle trail, they veered onto the Big South Trail, a path far less forgiving. This trail wound alongside the roaring Kashlak-Pudra River, famous for its breathtaking views, but also for its dangers: narrow, uneven, rocky stretches with steep drop-offs and thick wilderness on either side. Cell phone signals were almost non-existent, isolating the group in the vast forest. Jaryd, small and fearless, continued ahead, unaware of the growing risk. The adults did not take extra care to keep him close. No one held his hand. No one watched him carefully. The group spread out, some moving faster, others lagging behind, and Jaryd's figure bounced through the trees, his wide eyes drinking in every detail. Then, at a bend in the river, 2 fishermen spotted a small boy walking alone. Jaryd wore a white t-shirt emblazoned with the word Walmart and simple blue jeans clothes that stood out in the natural hues of the forest. The fishermen assumed he was part of the larger group they had seen nearby and paid him little attention. Moments later, a scream pierced the quiet woods. It was sharp, high-pitched, and sudden, a sound that echoed through the trees but vanished as quickly as it had appeared. The scream startled everyone nearby, including the fishermen, but it lasted only seconds. No one could tell where it came from or what had caused it. Then silence. Jocelyn, Jaryd's older sister, later described the scream as strange, both like a cry of distress and like someone playing a game of tag. But whatever the nature of the scream, something terrible had happened. Jaryd was gone. At first, the group thought he might have run ahead, simply out of sight for a moment. But when they called his name and searched nearby, panic set in. There was no sign of the boy anywhere on the trail or in the dense forest surrounding them. The day, which had started with innocent hopes of learning about nature, took a terrifying turn that no one could have predicted. Jaryd Atadero, full of life and wonder just minutes before, had vanished into the wilderness without a trace. The forest held its secrets close. The trees whispered nothing. The river rushed on, indifferent to the disappearance of a small boy who had been so full of joy just moments ago. Alan was still at the resort when the news reached him. It crushed him. His youngest son was missing on a trail he had never approved, lost in a wilderness that suddenly seemed cold and menacing. And so began one of the most puzzling disappearances in Colorado's history. Part 2, Into the Silence. The forest seemed to close in tighter as the daylight faded. The once lively group of hikers was now gripped by a growing terror that swallowed the crisp October air like a dark cloud. Jaryd was missing. No one could explain how a fearless, energetic 3-year-old simply vanished from the trail in broad daylight. The adults called out his name, voices shaking, echoing through the dense woods. They scrambled over rocky outcrops and tangled roots, searching every shadow and underbrush. But the forest answered with silence. No giggles, no footsteps, no sign of Jaryd. The wilderness, vast and indifferent, seemed to swallow the boy whole. Hours ticked by, and the search grew frantic. But the group, already shaken, made a critical mistake. In the shock and chaos of the moment, no one called for outside help right away. Please give our channel a subscribe to follow and expose mysterious, strange, and terrifying projects to the light. Comment below if you still don't have answers to the many unusual points in this story. Instead, they scattered, desperate to find Jaryd on their own. Meanwhile, back at the resort, Jaryd Atadero was unaware of the nightmare unfolding. Hours passed before someone, breathless and pale, arrived to deliver the news. Jaryd was gone. Alan's world shattered. His heart pounded with disbelief and a fierce, consuming fear. How could this happen on a trail he never approved? How could his son vanish without a trace in a place he knew so well? The local sheriff's office and Lamar County Search and Rescue quickly mobilized. Volunteers flooded in, combing the rugged, steep terrain with flashlights and dogs. Planes took to the sky, their spotlights cutting through the gathering darkness. Bill Nelson, the under-sheriff leading the search, was confident at first. "We thought we'd find him fast," he later recalled. "A young child doesn't go far. Usually, they're crying or hiding close by. We expected to wrap it up before midnight." But midnight came and went, then dawn, and still no Jaryd. The search teams faced brutal challenges. The Big South Trail was unforgiving, a narrow, twisting path bordered by sheer drops and thick forest. Cold mountain air seeped into bones. Cell phone reception was nearly impossible, complicating coordination. The forest was a maze, every step covered in leaves, rocks, and shadows. Volunteers trekked miles each day, calling Jaryd's name until their voices were hoarse, but the forest swallowed their cries. There was no sign of the boy or any clue about what had happened to him. With each passing hour, hope dimmed. Even the last confirmed sighting, the fisherman's glimpse of a small boy walking alone, offered little comfort. Jaryd had appeared calm, not scared. How could someone so brave suddenly disappear? Rumors began to spread. Was Jaryd lost? Had he fallen? Was something sinister at play? Theories swirled, but the evidence was silent. At night, Jaryd Atadero sat alone, staring into the darkness that now haunted his life. His son had vanished into a wilderness that had once promised peace. The mountains had taken Jaryd without a sound. The community rallied around the family, but even with hundreds searching, time was slipping away. And in the wilderness, time was the enemy. Part 3. Chaos in the Wilderness. The search for Jaryd quickly spiraled into a nightmare far beyond anyone's expectations. What should have been a focused rescue effort turned into a chaotic scramble against time and terrain. The unforgiving wilderness of the Big South Trail refused to give up its secret easily. As the days passed, frustration mounted. Searchers, both professional and volunteer, were exhausted, their hope wavering under the weight of cold mountain winds and unyielding rock faces. They combed every inch of the forest, crawling over boulders, pushing through thick underbrush, diving into icy pools. Yet Jaryd remained elusive, a ghost hidden deep in the shadowy folds of the forest. Then, tragedy struck in an almost surreal twist. A military helicopter had been dispatched to assist in the aerial search. It was a trusted aircraft sent from Fee Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The helicopter's crew included 4 military personnel and Mark Sheets, a member of the Lamar County Search and Rescue Team. Sheets hadn't planned to be on that flight, but had volunteered to help coordinate the ground search from the air. Minutes after re-entering the mountain corridor, the helicopter began to struggle. The thin mountain air, combined with the heavy fuel load, created a deadly situation. The aircraft stalled suddenly. Sheets remembered the moment vividly. Lying on the floor of the chopper with the door open, he pleaded over the intercom, "We need altitude now." The co-pilot's haunting reply came, "I know, but I can't. We're going in." Time seemed to slow. The rotors clipped treetops. The blades shattered into deadly shards. Debris flew through the forest like shrapnel. A severed tree limb smashed through the open hatch, striking the Air Force doctor's face and fracturing his eye socket. Seconds later, the helicopter crashed violently into the trees, breaking apart into 3 pieces. Yet the engine screamed, still burning fuel for hours after impact. The crew, though shaken and injured, managed to crawl free. But Mark Sheets was not so lucky. He was thrown and pinned unconscious under the wreckage, suffering a 13-inch gash down his leg with his femur bone exposed, a severe concussion, multiple fractured vertebrae, and a broken shoulder. Sheets later said he only took the flight to help find Jaryd to make a difference. Instead, he nearly lost his life. Nearby search and rescue members sprinted to the crash site. They found the helicopter in ruins, parts scattered across the forest floor. Breaking a window, they pulled Sheets from the wreckage, saving his life. Emotionally shattered, Sheets was a grim reminder of how dangerous the search had become. The hunt for one missing child had turned into a near disaster with lives almost lost. But the chaos wasn't limited to the forest. As news of the helicopter crash broke, the media descended on the area like a second storm. Television satellite trucks lined Highway 14. Reporters and camera crews flooded the trails. The disappearance of Jaryd was no longer a quiet local tragedy. It was a national spectacle. Sheriff Justin Smith, then a sergeant, recalled the scene. "We had searchers being brought out on stretchers. A missing child overnight. The Air Force closed off the crash site. Then the TV trucks, 17 of them, lined up along the highway. Anchors in fur coats wandering the trails. The media frenzy amplified pressure on law enforcement and volunteers. The search effort blurred into a circus of cameras, conflicting reports, and wild speculation. Soon, the story attracted strange and unsettling elements. Psychics called in with supposed visions of Jaryd's whereabouts. A barefoot man arrived, claiming he could track the boy with the help of a donkey. A Native American spiritualist performed rituals, asking the mountain to reveal its secret. Amidst this whirlwind of hope and distraction, search teams pressed on. Volunteers climbed steep slopes, searched riverbanks, and dove into icy pools, combing every inch of the forest. But the boy remained lost to the wilderness. Jaryd Atadero watched helplessly from the sidelines, feeling the search dissolve into chaos. His son was gone, and the world was watching, but not necessarily helping. Part 4. Shadows deepen and theories multiply. The wreckage of the helicopter crash left the search team shaken but determined. Yet even as the forest guarded its secrets, the mystery of Jaryd Atadero's disappearance only deepened. The media spotlight, the strange sightings, and the spiritualists' rituals had turned the forest into a stage where hope, despair, and suspicion played out in equal measure. With the chaos swirling around the search, Jaryd Atadero faced a crushing reality. The boy he loved so fiercely was still lost in the vast wilderness, and answers were nowhere in sight. Then, after years of silence, the forest whispered a new clue. In 2003, 4 years after Jaryd vanished, 2 businessmen hiking near the Big South Trail spotted something unusual, a flash of color among the fallen leaves and moss. Approaching carefully, they discovered partial human remains carefully arranged on a rocky ledge high above the trail. Near the remains lay a brown polar fleece sweater, a pair of blue trousers, and a pair of Jaryd's distinctive Tarzan sneakers, the same shoes he'd been wearing the day he disappeared. Forensic teams arrived to carefully collect the remains, treating the site with solemn respect. DNA testing soon confirmed the impossible. The remains were indeed Jaryd's. Alan, devastated yet relieved, created a shrine to his son in the bedroom Jaryd had left behind. The skull fragment found with the remains was kept atop Jaryd's favorite toys, a chilling, silent testament to a boy lost but not forgotten. Yet the discovery raised more questions than it answered. Jaryd's clothing was almost pristine. No claw marks, no bloodstains, no signs of struggle. Wildlife experts and forensic analysts found this baffling. A mountain lion attack, the initial theory, should have left clear evidence of predation, torn clothes, scattered bones, damaged remains. But Jaryd's bones were clustered closely near his clothes, undisturbed. Even more unsettling was the fact that Jaryd's pants were found inside out. While children sometimes undress themselves out of fear or confusion, experts noted that a child so young, in such difficult terrain, would unlikely remove pants, much less turn them inside out. And then there was the location itself, hundreds of feet above the trail, perched on a steep rocky slope. A brutal climb for any adult, let alone a small boy barely 50 pounds, wearing tennis shoes. How could Jaryd have reached that place on his own? Why would he have been there at all? The answers eluded everyone. Speculation swirled. Had someone moved the remains? Was the discovery site a staged scene to mislead investigators? Was there a darker truth lurking beneath the surface? The idea of abduction, once dismissed, returned to the table. Had Jaryd been taken? And if so, why were his remains left there, carefully arranged? Whispers of cover-ups, conspiracies, and even supernatural forces spread through the community and media. From tales of ritualistic crimes in the wilderness to impossible natural explanations, the story had become a tangled web of fear and mystery. Law enforcement officers, wilderness trackers, and even family members remain divided. "This case doesn't have closure because it doesn't make sense," one retired search coordinator admitted. "Every theory breaks down at some point." Alan refused to accept easy answers. To him, Jaryd was more than a cold case, more than a faded photograph. His son's story mattered. He poured his grief into a mission writing books that chronicled every moment of Jaryd's disappearance, exposing the failures and unanswered questions. He became an advocate for better safety protocols in national parks and clearer emergency communications. Alan spoke publicly, standing before cameras and microphones, reliving his pain to prevent other families from enduring this same heartbreak. For him, advocacy was not about heroism, it was about love. The fierce, unyielding love of a father who refused to give up. Part 5. A Father's Fight and the Unfinished Story. Years passed. The relentless march of time softened headlines and dimmed the world's attention. Jaryd Atadero's disappearance slipped from national news to whispered conversations, a cold case in the vastness of wilderness mysteries. But Alan Atadero never let go. Every day since that fateful October morning, he pushed forward with a fierce determination. Posters bearing Jaryd's smiling face still plastered walls from Colorado's gas stations to distant towns, each one a silent plea for answers. Interviews, public appearances, books, all were part of his fight to keep Jaryd's story alive. Alan refused to let his son become a forgotten shadow. Behind closed doors, Alan combed through reports, public records, and leads no matter how small or unlikely. He reached out to law enforcement, volunteers, and even psychics, desperate for a clue. Each new lead sparked hope, only to be crushed by silence or dead ends. The pain of not knowing settled deep, a constant ache beneath the surface of daily life. The remains discovery in 2003 should have brought closure. Instead, it opened a floodgate of questions that no one could answer. Who moved Jaryd's remains? Why the eerie preservation of his clothes? What had really happened in those 4 missing years? Officially, the case remains unsolved. There was even a bizarre chapter. A man claiming to be Jaryd appeared years later, harassing Alan and forcing him to obtain a restraining order. When the man violated it, authorities arrested him. The DNA match from the remains debunked the claim, leading investigators to believe the man was mentally ill or seeking attention. Despite all this, Jaryd's story refused to end quietly. The tragedy sparked awareness. Colorado's governor declared September 8th Recreational Safety Awareness Week in Jaryd's honor, a small tribute to a boy lost too soon. Alan continued to fight, not just for Jaryd, but for every family lost in the wilderness's shadows. His advocacy called for clearer safety measures, better communication in emergencies, and accountability for search efforts. Through it all, Alan's message was clear: Jaryd mattered. His story mattered, and so does the truth. What really happened on that trail in the Colorado wilderness? How did a healthy, happy child vanish without a trace? How did the forest remain silent for 4 years, only to return his remains in such a baffling condition? No one knows. Some mysteries resist explanation. But Alan's fight, his refusal to let the story fade, reminds us that behind every headline is a human heart. Behind every cold case, a family still searching for answers. The Colorado mountains gave back Jaryd's remains, but not his story. It's still hidden among the trees, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. If this story moved you, remember Jaryd. Keep asking questions, keep seeking the truth. Because sometimes, the coldest trails still hold the hottest hope.